Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championships, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championships, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You, your friends, your family, whether you live in the States or internationally, I hope you are doing fine for yourself. And so, the next upcoming major UFC event coming up is Paulo Costa versus Israel Adesanya being the main event, with the co-main event being Jean Blackwoods against Dominic Reyes for the light heavyweight belt. And so coming up this Saturday is going to be, so last Saturday we had Overeem versus Sakai. This upcoming Saturday we have Roxanne Modafferi against Andrea Lee. If you're not a fan of Roxanne Modafferi, I recommend you really do, because she herself is a really awesome person. We got Ottoman Azaltar against Kama Worthy, and then the main event, Michelle Waterson versus Angela Hill. Now, I'm going to promote the heck out of Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill right now, because I always feel like Michelle Waterson, if there were to be an atomweight division, because she came to the UFC, she's similar to another fighter, not Jinyu Frey. Was it Jinyu Frey? She's similar to a lot of fighters in that if there was just one weight division lower, she would be really dominant in it. And I thought if Michelle Waterson, if there was an atomweight division, she would be really great. But Michelle Waterson, there's speculation going on, and hey, should she move up to one weight class higher, go to flyweight division? And I thought to myself, no. Michelle Waterson in the flyweight division or in the strawweight division, she's pretty much kept as, she's in the right division right now. If there's an atomweight division, that'd be an entirely different thing. But Angela Hill and Michelle Waterson, I always talk about both of their performances against Claudia Cadella and Carla Esparza. I'm a firm believer that both of them should have won their respective fights. But instead, we have Waterson and Angela Hill. They'll be matched up against one another here. And I'm very excited for this. I really am. Angela Hill has to be the most underrated fighter in the entire women's... Actually, Michelle Waterson versus Angela Hill has to be the battle between the two most underrated fighters in all of the UFC's women's strawweight division. I genuinely believe that. Michelle Waterson, she has all the tools to become a great fighter. It just, she lacks the physicals in the sense that her timing and her accuracy and her kickboxing and karate stuff is great. Does she have the power to actually knock anyone out with it? Is she really a threat in the stand-up? Not really. Does she know how to grapple people? Yes, 100%. But can she grapple with the other person in the highest level? I don't really think so. I think she can beat anybody in the strawweight division that's not within the top 5. Good fighter, but she can't really compete at the highest level. And for Angela Hill, I think Angela Hill, after her performance against Claudia Cadella, which Angela Hill was the huge underdog, I genuinely believe she should have won the fight. I think Angela Hill should have defeated Claudia Cadella, and the judges didn't score her way, so right now we're going to see the battle between two of these underrated fighters coming up this Saturday at the UFC Apex Facility Building. So this Saturday is going to be taking at so September 12th, put it on your calendars, people, because trust me, even though both Waterson and Angela Hill, they're not really that ranked highly in the women's strawweight division or in the pound for pound rankings, trust me, you're going to see a really fun show between two fighters. It's not going to end in the first, second, or third round. I can see this fight go on to being 5 rounds of action, 5 rounds of back and forth, very close action, and that's what I'm excited about. And so it is coming in from BloodyElbow.com. I'll be talking about what is going on with the news brief. Kamaru Usman says Covington is the best and possibly the worst opponent for Tyron Woodley. Kamaru Usman gives his take on the upcoming welterweight bout between Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley, which will take place, by the way, at a UFC Fight Night event. Not a pay-per-view, but a Fight Night event. Which is astounding because these two, in many occasions in their career, when you follow these two, really were meant... Look, 2 years ago, if you were to ask me, Tyron Woodley, Covington, could that main event a pay-per-view? generally, anybody would say yes. Woodley Covington, main event, definitely. But, Woodley, he's not been... Woodley hasn't had a good series of fights lately, especially after losing to Usman. There comes questions on his motivation and how willing he is to continue on to being a fighter. And I question that myself. He had a good performance against Gilbert Burns, but it wasn't the best version of Tyron Woodley. I really believe that we are not going to see Tyron Woodley. Like, we've already seen the best version of Tyron Woodley. And so it's expected to not expect anything else from Woodley. Like, do I expect to see Tyron Woodley from 2016? No. Do I expect to see Tyron Woodley when he was champion? No. Do I expect Tyron Woodley to give his opponent, some stress or some annoyance? Possibly. He is definitely not a top 5 fighter, in my opinion. I don't really think so. Meanwhile, we have Colby Covington. And Colby Covington, I am off and on with Covington's performance against Usman, because Usman versus Covington, when they both fought each other, I didn't find to be that impressed. I just wasn't. It was a battle between two wrestlers who have no punching power, whose ability to strike isn't all that threatening, having a boxing match with one another. That was what it was. And I know people are going to say, well, Robbie Lawler, Colby Covington. Like, Colby Covington, I think he had a record for most strikes landing I think he had a record, like most strikes ever landed in the welterweight division in a 3-round fight. Yeah. So, yes, Colby Covington has the record, but you need to understand the context of this. Robbie Lawler is in the same boat as Anthony Lion Smith right now. You got these fighters who have this, like, credibility or have this popularity or notoriety for being these guys who are great, amazing strikers. Well, you know what? Yeah, they did. Years ago. People always keep thinking of Robbie Lawler as if he's still the guy who is that tough as nail, no nonsense dude who fought against Rory McDonald. Guess what? His fight against Rory McDonald was years ago. Years ago. And if you just look at Lawler's performances on fighters like Cerrone, fighters like Colby Covington, Ben Askren, you would recognize, there are some glimpse, small moments where you can go see the old Robbie Lawler. But you know what? Robbie Lawler and Anthony Smith both lost their past 2 fights. And in the past 3 years, they have not had a good run of fights. So I do not overrate the performances people have when they compete against those fighters. I don't think Colby Covington's performance against Robbie Lawler should have gotten him a title fight against Kamaru Usman. It just wasn't. I don't think Colby Covington's performance against... I'm not impressed. I just really am. I know these things. I know. Like, who am I? I've never fought in the octagon, so who am I to say I'm not impressed? Well, to be honest with you, I genuinely don't think either Colby Covington or Tyron Woodley are capable of defeating either Kamaru Usman or Gilbert Burns. I don't really think so. And so we take it now to UFC Vegas 11. It's going to be taking place September 19, just 10 days away, 1 week before the UFC event that has Paulo Costa versus Israel Adesanya. But Kamaru Usman is coming from Usman. Kamaru Usman believes that Covington could be the best and possibly the worst thing to happen to Tyron Woodley, and says the former welterweight champ needs to find a way to neutralize Chaos's offense. I think that this is the best and possibly worst case scenario for Tyron Woodley, Usman said during the UFC Vegas 9 post-show events. As far as style matchups, I think this is possibly one of the worst stylistic matchups for him after coming back-to-back losses with guys that love the kind of pressure fighting. Kamaru Usman saying he thinks Tyron Woodley is having a bad matchup against fighters who love pressuring him. Guys that can grapple as well as guys that can kind of do throw some volume in their striking. On the flip side, Woodley is somewhat of an expert when it comes to southpaw fighters, and the Nigerian Nightmare believes T Wood would eventually find a home for that vaunted overhand rights. On the flip side, this is a tremendous matchup for Tyron Woodley because Tyron Woodley is a specialist when it comes to dealing with southpaws, Usman said. He knows how to angle off to kind of guide them into a big fight with a big right hand that he has. Of course, the one thing that I feel like I'm being pulled in again is Tyron is giving this. I'm back, so I'm starting to drink a Kool-Aid again. Maybe the Tyron Woodley of old is back. I'm intrigued by this matchup. I can't wait to see it happen. Two guys I'm familiar with, and I'll be watching closely. Alright then. I kind of agree with Kamaru Usman in the sense that for Tyron Woodley, it does feel like that. It really does. Because every time you see Tyron Woodley, every time, the promo package is pretty much the same. Hey, I'm Tyron Woodley. I defeated Rob Lawler for the belt. I'm a dominant wrestler. I got great knockout power. But you know what? I lost my motivation. I lost my enjoyment of the fight game. But now, this time, for realsies, I actually enjoy the fight game, and I'm more motivated, and I'm more focused, now more than ever. That's every single Tyron Woodley video package since he lost the belt. Every single time. Tyron Woodley lost the belt. Then they show highlights and clips of Tyron Woodley knocking people out before and during his time as champion. But what has Tyron Woodley done lately? What has he done? Is he an all-time great specimen in the sense that he has all the physical tools and skills to be the perfect fighter, to be the greatest UFC welterweight champion of all time? Yes, 100% he does. A motivated Tyron Woodley, the peak version of Tyron Woodley, would defeat Kamaru Usman, would defeat Colby Covington. I think the peak version of Tyron Woodley can defeat George St. Pierre. I'm that confident. I really think so. I think if we had a motivated peak Tyron Woodley that sustained himself for about 5 years, we could argue that Tyron Woodley might be the greatest of all time. I genuinely believe that. But when I look at Tyron Woodley, I saw news reports that came out that showed all the fighters' salaries and checkbooks, and it turns out that in Woodley's previous performance against Gilbert Burns, he made $200,000. Now then, for those of you unaware, Tyron Woodley, he is focused on acting. He is focused on this music career that he really believes he's going to have. He's focused on being a reporter for TMZ. And when you surround yourself in the Southern California lifestyle or the culture, me being a person who's lived in SoCal for the better part of 20 years, the culture here and the mind frame and the concept of what is big money, what is small money, what it means to be successful is very different to the average Joe. To you, $200,000 is a lot of money. I'll say this right now. I've got many friends who are a decade younger than Tyron Woodley, who make way more money than Woodley, doing a simple job, working 9 to 5, and they are not miserable, I'll tell you that. I know people have this idea like, oh man, if you work a 9 to 5 job, then you're miserable. Why don't you become your own entrepreneur? Letting you know. I know people who are relaxed, who work a simple job that they enjoy, who make $250,000, or only in their early mid-20s. Can you imagine yourself being 23 years old, 24 years old, and making $250,000, getting married, just got married, has a house? I wouldn't call them miserable. I wouldn't. And for Tyron Woodley, here's the thing. For Tyron Woodley, as a person who works for TMZ, who consumes himself with the culture in Southern California, with the Los Angeles vibe, like Miami, New York, $200,000 that he made from his last fight, the money he's made during his time as champion, it's chump change. As a person who studied in the Silicon Valley, the amount of money or the notoriety or the popularity that UFC fighters have or have made for themselves is chump change, nothing money. To you, I think there's a recent article that came out. I'll go in depth into this after the short commercial break. But Conor McGregor is listed outside the top 100 most highest paid athletes. And it made sense. 100 made sense. 100 most highest paid athletes in the sense of how much money he made for the UFC doesn't belong. So doesn't belong. I wouldn't even say he's within top 300. I don't really think so. So for Tyron Woodley against Colby Covington, I have lost all my faith on Tyron Woodley on being the great fighter that he is. And he has a tendency of being very passive against opponents who pressure him. And Colby Covington, even though the guy doesn't have knockout power, the ability to pressure on his opponents can overwhelm them. And for someone like Tyron Woodley, who is more focused on having a long, sustained career, who is going to avoid as much damage as possible, who isn't going to take any risks, to me, this is an easy victory for Colby Covington, which is sad. Because if these two people were to fight each other and we were to see the peak versions of both of them, Tyron Woodley would easily win the fight, without a doubt. And so you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And we are back. And so I was discussing Tyron Woodley versus Colby Covington, but in the midst of discussing Tyron Woodley and Colby Covington, I was discussing how big $200,000 was for Tyron Woodley's first performance against Gilbert Burns. And it's impossible not to talk about fighter economics without bringing up Conor McGregor. And so Conor McGregor, he is currently ranked as of the year of 2020, as of January, February, March, May, June, July, as of July 4, 2020, Conor McGregor is considered the 16th world's highest paid athlete in the year 2020. So Conor McGregor, he banked $30 million in his first round knockout against Donald Cowboy Cerrone during 2020. And so the money he also got was from UFC with commission. Also, he got some money coming in from Reebok, which adds another $5 million. Also, he's making money from his Proper 12. So Conor McGregor, all you gotta think about this. How much money is Conor McGregor making alone with purely just through his fights and performances alone? I'm happy for Conor. I really am. I don't think Conor McGregor can sustain being within the, cause he's currently right now number 53. Alright. So he's like ranked number 53 as it pertains to 2020 Celebrity 100 earnings. But he's ranked number 16 on world's highest paid athletes right now. And here's the thing with Conor McGregor. I don't think he can make a sustainable high amount of money through just mixed martial arts, victories, and contracts alone. I don't think so. Conor McGregor is a genius. He's able to, so Conor McGregor is what Tyron Woodley thinks or what he really wants to be, in that his one avenue of making money is through fighting. And the other avenues he can make money is through music, through acting, through being a news reporter, through being a personality. From the Tyron Woodley himself isn't all that interesting of a personality in the first place. He really isn't. I agree with Dana White's assessment in that he kind of is a boring dude who's trying really hard to be interesting. But for Conor McGregor, he was able to make money from his Reebok deal, which by the way, it's no longer Reebok, it's now Venom. He's got his own sponsorships. He has Proper 12 going on. He has his notoriety from he banked $100 million in his fight against Floyd Mayweather. So really, Conor McGregor, the dude is able to make money outside of the UFC octagon. Which is so funny because you hear fighters like Jon Jones and Jorge Masvidal, they're saying, hey, I want to go and make more money from mixed martial arts. Well, here's the sad truth. You can't really make all that much money through your performance and through your contract alone competing for a mixed martial arts organization. If you want to compete in the UFC, here's the thing. If you want to gain some notoriety and become a world champion at the highest stage, then you have to go compete for the UFC. Now, you don't compete for the UFC to make a whole lot of money. You really don't. I know. So here in California, the average salary is about $60,000 a year. Is the highest average. It was about the average median income. But if you live in the Palo Alto area, it's $250,000 a year. Is rated considered average, or that's the median income. And so for Conor McGregor, yeah, Conor McGregor is smart, man. He was able to go bank in $40 million in the year of 2020 by just competing once. He fought one time in 2020, made $48 million a year. Out of intrigue, let me see this. How much money did Khabib Nurmagomedov make? Money 2020. So according to Forbes, Khabib Nurmagomedov banked in $6 million. So Khabib is arguably the best fighter in MMA today, and he's undoubted on top of his game right now. The UFC lightweight champion has never tasted a victory or has never tasted defeats. So Khabib's net worth in 2020 estimated is $30 million. It's estimated. According to Forbes, a report that Nurmagomedov earned $16.5 million over the fiscal year of 2019-2020, which ends in April. The highest earning Russian fighter under the age of 40. Khabib began his first career, blah, 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 blah. I'm trying to figure out, what did he make in 2020 in his pro fight? Okay, so Khabib reportedly earned $2 million from his fight with Conor McGregor. However, he has reportedly only received half of the fight purse due to ongoing investigations by the Nevada State Athletic Commission, so it's only half. The NSAC also imposed a $500,000 fine on the UFC champion for this transaction, so he made $4 million from his fight with Conor McGregor. After signing a multi-year deal with the UFC in June 2019, Nurmagomedov made a second title defense against Dustin Poirier. So, weirdly enough, Dustin Poirier made $2 million more fighting. So Khabib made more money. He made $2 million more fighting against Dustin Poirier than he did fighting against Conor McGregor. Think about that. I don't think there's anyone else who is bringing that up, actually. They're saying Conor McGregor is the money fight. Well, Conor McGregor gives you the opportunity to go and renegotiate your contract because Khabib, man, he made $6 million fighting against Dustin, but he only made $4 million fighting against Conor. I'm just putting this out there right now. Fighter economics goes well beyond where your performances are and where your contract is in the UFC. You always got to plan ahead. You always do. And so what else is going on in the news? Speaking of Dustin Poirier, so Dustin Poirier is in to face against Tony Ferguson if the price is right. So this is coming in by Ariel Helwani from ESPN. The UFC wants to book a highly anticipated fight between Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson on October 24, but it isn't a done deal just yet. I'm in. Poirier told ESPN on Wednesday, I just need to be compensated if they want this fight. Simple as that. Ferguson has verbally agreed to the fights, sources told by ESPN, and signing the deal does not appear to be a hurdle. Dustin Poirier said that the two sides have not been able to come to terms, delaying the finalization of the fights for UFC 254 next month in Abu Dhabi. I'm a prize fighter, and the prize needs to be right. Who is training American Top Team in Coconut Creek, Florida. UFC President Dana White has said in late August that the promotion was probably going to book Ferguson versus Poirier. However, nothing has been publicly discussed since. The fight would feature two of the best lightweights in the world, as well as two of the most popular fighters in the UFC. Poirier, who's 26-6, is coming off a really strong performance against Dan Hooker. He has won 5 of his last 6 fights. The only fight he lost to was against Khabib Nurmagomedov, to which he was very close to winning via choke. The main event of UFC 254, Nurmagomedov versus Gaethje for the undisputed title. The main event for UFC 254 is the Poirier-Ferguson fight, if it gets signed, would serve as the co-main event. Think about that, man. Double lightweight action. Co-main event, Poirier versus Ferguson. Main event, Nurmagomedov versus Gaethje. A lot of things on line there. Only thing that can make it perfect, though, is if Conor McGregor was somehow in the card. Sources said the UFC has discussed a scenario where if Gaethje withdraws from the main event, Ferguson would replace him against Nurmagomedov. However, if Khabib withdraws, Poirier would be the replacement against Justin Gaethje, and it'd be flipped interim lightweight belt. This stipulation would make sense considering Nurmagomedov Ferguson fight is one the UFC has tried to book 5 times to no avail. Poirier has a win over Justin Gaethje, but in the sense, I feel like we are seeing currently the best version of Justin Gaethje. I believe so. So while we're talking about this, Ferguson versus Dustin Poirier. My stock right now is currently on. It's weird. It's hard to judge Ferguson versus Dustin Poirier right now because you always have to think about the fighter's last performances. So Ferguson against Gaethje, it was more of a sense that Gaethje was just a greater fighter. He just fought perfectly. But also, one can say there's an asterisk to that fight. Off the basis that Ferguson, he was prepping up, and he's been exhausted through training. He had to go extend his training camp. The dude looked like a zombie. He looked tired. And he just wasn't well equipped to go fight against someone like Justin Gaethje when he only had about like a week and a half, 2 weeks notice to go fight the guy when he's been prepping up for the better part of years to go fight against Khabib. Now, I could be making excuses. I could be. But once again, man, it's hard to judge who would win between Poirier and Ferguson. I would have said Ferguson a while back. I would have. I would have said Ferguson would be the favorite then. But you know what? It ain't really happening because the Dan Hooker fight. A lot of people thought Dan Hooker would defeat Dustin Poirier, but it didn't happen instead. So Poirier against Ferguson right now. If I were just to judge the fighters based on last performances, I'm going to go for Dustin Poirier defeating Ferguson. Hopefully that fight comes in as the co-main event. Would I like to see Conor McGregor in the card somehow? Not because I want to see a great Conor McGregor fight, mostly in the sense that I just want to see Conor McGregor's presence is important to the lightweight division. It's hard not to talk about the lightweight division, to not talk about Khabib or Ferguson or Gaethje without bringing up Conor McGregor. I know, like, to many people he's overrated, to many he's very tiring, but he is an important figure in the lightweight division. So this is also coming in by Mark Raimondi. After a memorable career at featherweight, Ricardo Lamas, 38, retires from his MMA career after 12 years. Ricardo Lamas, 30, announced Monday on MMA Junkie Radio that he is retiring from mixed martial arts after 12 years as a pro. The former UFC title challenger said after his unanimous decision win over Bill Algeo on August 29 that he was considering retirement, and now he has decided on it. It's something Lamas has said he has thought about since 2017. Since my fight with Jason Knight, which was 3 years back, I've kind of been contemplating, Lamas told him fighting. I remember before that fight, I told my wife, I was like, if I have a good performance in this fight, I might just call it a career. But the thing with this sport is you have a good performance, and you have a win, and then you want another one, and then it becomes like an addiction, and you just keep chasing those victories. And you know what? I agree with Ricardo Lamas. And he's saying Ricardo Lamas is still a top fighter. He is. Lamas, who's 28, reached the height of his career 6 years ago, when he fought against UFC featherweight title champion Jose Aldo back at UFC 169 on February 1st, 2014. The Chicago native lost that bout by unanimous decision, but remained as a top 145-pound fighter for several years after that. Ricardo Lamas, 38, owns victories over the likes of Cub Swanson, Diego Sanchez, and Charles Oliveira. 3 really good names there to go off on. Ricardo Lamas has lost 3 of his past 5 fights. In his bout before Algeo, Lamas had his jaw broken by Calvin Kattar on UFC 238. By the way, good showing by Calvin Kattar. Nothing to be embarrassed by that. The injury is the worst of his career, was another catalyst for him to decide retired. When asked how he wanted to be remembered, Lamas told MMA Fighting that I always left it in the cage. Just like in this Algeo fight, if it was a back and forth fight, Lamas said, but just never stopping and kind of as the fight progresses on, I just get meaner, and the dog comes out on me a little bit more. That's probably due to me just being the youngest of 6 boys and just getting beaten up to a point where I just started fighting back. And so, I am happy. I'm happy for Ricardo Lamas. We've seen it time and time again of fighters coming back, leaving, coming back. Conor McGregor, is he gonna come back? Is he gonna fight? George St. Pierre, what is going on with him? Johnny Hendricks this year retired. Another Damian Maia. Is Damian Maia officially retiring? I don't know. Some say yes, some say no. Every Anderson Silva fight is being booked as if it is the last fight of his career. always bothers him. Always bothers him to go and hear that. And so Ricardo Lamas, you know what? Good for you, man. Really good for you. You know what? He made his money. He made his career. He's only 38 years old, actually. So really, his life is still... It's still kind of his starting. He's only 30 years old. There are a lot of fighters who in the year of 2020 had just like... You know, I think COVID really got to people in a mental state. I think COVID really got people to be like, oh man, dude, you know what? I need to really rethink my life. It's happened to me. Like, I'm gonna say right now, COVID-19 completely shaped my life in the past 6 months. It really has. I wouldn't be as involved or meeting with organizations or with communities as much as I am. I've been moving. I've been moving around places, making new friends, making new contacts, going through huge changes in my personal career through COVID-19. And I can safely tell you right now, it's not just me. I got multiple friends whose careers and whose lives has changed as a result of COVID-19, whose, you know, their outlook in life differs. So, for Ricardo Lamas, by the way, he's saying Ricardo Lamas can still compete at the highest level. He really can. I don't doubt him for doing that. But you know what? He wants to retire. The injury really got to him. And if he wants to do that, you know, good. He's got family. He's got kids. He's got a future to look in front of him. He's not even 40 years old yet. And guess what? 40 years old is still pretty young. He's still a pretty young guy. He's got a lot of years left ahead of him. And I'm happy for Ricardo Lamas for whatever he plans to do with his life. You know, start his own company. You know, start his own restaurants. Just whatever he has going down in his life, hopefully he's happy with it. And so coming up right after the short break here, I'll be back with some more MMA news. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, coming back with the news brief.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
And welcome back to the news brief. And so what is going on here? Well, first off, this is coming in by ESPN.com. UFC Fight Night main event postponed after Glover Teixeira tests positive for COVID-19. This is being written by Mark Raimondi. Glover Teixeira and Diego Santos will not be fighting next week in a key UFC light heavyweight bout after all. Glover Teixeira has tested positive for COVID-19 and the UFC Fight Night main event bout scheduled for September 12th has been rescheduled. UFC officials confirmed Wednesday to ESPN. Teixeira vs. Santos is now targeted for the October 3 event. Officials confirmed. Teixeira's team told ESPN in Al-Hawani that the bout will no longer be a 5-round main event. Currently, the October 3 UFC card has a headliner of Holly Holm versus Irene Aldana. ESPN has Santos ranked number 5 and Teixeira ranked number 7 in the world of light heavyweight world. Teixeira's team says that Teixeira is feeling 100% okay. The positive test came back Wednesday morning. The new main event for September 12th has not been yet determined. Michelle Waterson and Angela Hill is the currently scheduled co-main event. And actually, I will say this right now, that fight has been officially moved to the main event. Now, will it be a 3-round fight or a 5-round fight? Not really sure. I can see both fighters going 5 rounds though. Teixeira 31-7 has won 4 straight and is coming off a 5th-round KO against Anthony Smith back in May. The Brazil native, who has lived for many years in Connecticut, has been near the top of the light heavyweight division for nearly a decade. Teixeira 40 fought Jon Jones for the 205-pound belt and lost back at UFC 172 in 2014. Santos, who is 21-7, has not fought since falling to Jones by unanimous decision at UFC 239 in July 2019. The Brazilian slugger was on a 4-fight winning streak going into that bout. Santos, 36, has just 2 losses in his past 10 fights between the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. Gonna say this now? It's gonna be a scrap. It will definitely be a scrap between these two fighters. And really, who's gonna win that one? My money is put on Glover Teixeira. Yeah, I'm placing my money on Glover Teixeira. So, real or not real? Okay, might as well talk about Nick Diaz here. Alright. Real or not real, Nick Diaz will return to the octagon in 2021. It is shared by Earl Wani's Twitter. Nick Diaz, today he weighs in at 175, 165 pound range per his manager, Kevin Mabiga. He just completed a 14-week diet and training regimen. This is the first time he cuts weight in approximately 4 years. Mabiga said Diaz wanted to do a test cut because he wanted to come back. Earl Helwani goes on to say, I think it's real this time, and Nick Diaz isn't doing a 14-week training camp just for kicks. I believe he was serious when he told me last November he wanted to return, but I don't think it was the right time for him. Ultimately, I don't know at this time what helped kick this off, but what I do know is he appears to be in the best shape. By the way, he does look good in the Twitter, on the Twitter video. His team can insist he's 100% coming back and targeting for a return early 2021. Alright, and it's rumored that it could be Nick Diaz against either Colby Covington or Tyron Woodley based on who is the winner. Alright. Let me talk about this. What do I feel about the idea of Nick Diaz coming back? Dana White talked about it, and he says that he's still unsure about Nick Diaz. He's very unsure about Nick Diaz coming back. They're currently negotiating. Nothing's really official. I don't like the idea of Nick Diaz just fighting somebody as high regarded within the rankings as Colby Covington and Tyron Woodley. I just don't really enjoy that. I don't enjoy seeing Tyron Woodley. I'll love to see promo work. Here's the thing. The most interesting part about Colby Covington versus Nick Diaz is definitely going to be the promos and the interviews. But the fight in itself of Nick Diaz versus Colby Covington, that's not gonna get me, okay? You know what? I might actually order the pay-per-view just out of sheer intrigue of like, will this happen? Is Israel Adesanya coming on? Because, there's a really funny video that was posted on YouTube by Paulo Costa himself about Israel Adesanya. But let's talk about Nick Diaz here. So, Nick Diaz, do I think is he gonna come back 2021? I can see it. I can see him fight once in the year of 2021. That's all I'm gonna say here. That's all I'm gonna say. So there's a video that was released on YouTube by Paulo Costa's YouTube channel. You can also find it on Instagram, where they pretty much parodied, or they just made fun of Israel Adesanya, and they just speculated on like what they kind of simulated what the fight's going to end up on. So you've got one of the trainers being like, fighting from this corner, the UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. Then it shows Adesanya. They should have joked about Adesanya and just have him do dumb dances, or him do the Naruto thing with his hands, but instead just him on his phone. I'm not really sure about that. And then, in Paulo Costa's video, it showed Costa and Israel Adesanya. They come to the center of the ring. It's like some guy pretending to be Israel Adesanya. And the fight pretty much was Costa literally chasing Israel Adesanya. And what I mean by chasing him, I don't mean Costa's pressuring him and the guy pretending to be Israel Adesanya is like just walking backwards. No. He's running. He's running literally his way around in circles in the octagon, and he's actually trying to jump the cage. And the joke of the video, you guys should watch it. Put Paulo Costa, Israel Adesanya, or find Paulo Costa's main YouTube channel if you can. And you're gonna see this like really goofy video of Costa chasing this like fake Israel Adesanya. It's very funny, honestly. And here's the thing. Everyone generally expects this fight to be Paulo Costa pressuring on Izzy and Israel Adesanya just walking backwards. That's all it is. I just see Paulo Costa pressuring on Israel Adesanya. I do not believe Adesanya will be the one pressuring. There's not been a single fight ever in Paulo Costa's career where he's somehow the counterpuncher or the counterfighter. No, he is always the one bringing the action. And for someone like Israel Adesanya, the reason why Israel Adesanya's fight against Rio Romero sucked was because Adesanya's fighting style is just him defensively boxing. That's all it is. And it's him doing defensive boxing. And so, for Costa versus Israel Adesanya, this is a perfect matchup. In the sense, there's no way this fight can be boring. I just don't really see it. It can potentially be boring if Costa, but you know, based on the video, I can see Costa saying like, you know what, I know and I understand what Israel Adesanya is going to do. I don't care. I'm going to go and pressure him and I'm going to win. And if Costa pressures Israel Adesanya, it will be an exciting fight. That's what I'm saying. So this is coming in by MMAfighting.com. Dana White explains Khamzat Chimaev's double booking. Confirms fight with Damian Maia will happen in Las Vegas. This is coming in by Mike Heck. So Dana White seems to be all in with Khamzat Chimaev. 2 fights into his UFC career. Following his UFC Vegas 9 weigh-ins, White spoke with the media and revealed the promotion was working on a welterweight fight between Chimaev and multi-time title challenger Damian Maia for an October event on Fire Island. I thought Damian Maia retired. Apparently not. MMA Fighting also confirmed an initial report from Combate that the unbeaten prospect has also booked a middleweight bout between with Gerald Merchart at UFC event in Las Vegas on September 19. So he's got 2 fights coming up within a month. During Tuesday night's DWCS season 4, I'm looking at it. I don't know. Okay, so it's good. I don't know how that played out, but that's how we're doing it. Dana White told reporters backstage at the Apex facility building. I told these guys, get him 2 fights. Get him one here in Vegas and one in Fire Island, and he's fighting both here. I don't know why we're doing that, but whatever. It's all good. Chimaev, 26, has won and finished all 8 of his professional fights. Boris made his Octagon debut and submitted John Phillips in middleweight bouts. Back at UFC on ESPN 13, 10 days later, Chimaev made his second promotional appearance, this time for welterweight, and finished newcomer Reese McKee via first round TKO. Now that Chimaev has his next 2 fights booked, White was asked if he felt it was disrespectful towards Merchart to have his upcoming opponent follow-up bout rolled out. The thing is, the guy wants to keep fighting, White said. He wants all these fights back to back. It's no disrespect to his opponents, but either is going to win or lose. That has nothing to do with us. That's up to them. But to do that, really fight 2 fights in a row, you have to book them. For a guy like him, I would never do that for somebody else. I'd be like, relax, let's see if you get through this fight. But from what I've seen from him, I'm willing to do that with him. With Chimaev's flip-flopping weight classes for his 4 Octagon appearances as they currently stand, White is quite intrigued about the unbeaten prospect's potential trajectory in both the welterweight and the middleweight divisions. It's fascinating, White said. We've never really had anybody who is going to do anything like this, like he's doing right now. I can see why you would say, don't you think it's disrespectful to be booking a fight for him when he's already got a fight? But that's how you have to do it. It's interesting. I like it, and I've never had a guy like this, so it's fun. I'll play this game with him. After what I saw in his first 2 fights, he fought real guys. He didn't fight chumps. This isn't a guy who blew through a couple of setup fights. He beat real people. I'm gonna see how this plays out. So, you know what? There's a lot of hype on Chimaev. A lot of hype. If you just go on YouTube, there's already like recommendations going on in my feed for Chimaev already. In that, like, he's supposed to be like the next, like, Khabib. Which is really well timed considering the fact that it is expected that Khabib is going to retire soon. That's if he defeats Gaethje, and that's if he goes on and settles the fight against GSP. But Chimaev, there's a lot of stock going on to him right now. I wouldn't be, from what I've seen from him, he's definitely a future champion. And I really can't feel bad for Chimaev. If it's his idea to go on and be like, yeah, I want to go and fight for like 2 titles. I want to fight 2 divisions and be super active. Okay, you also gotta remember, COVID-19, man. A lot of fighters are pulling out. A lot of these cards are very impromptu. So for Chimaev, he's making double the money. Within the span of a month, he'll be getting 2 paychecks. 2 really solid, good-looking paychecks for himself. So good for Chimaev, man. He'll be making money, and also he's putting his name out there more. The UFC brass is really supportive of him. But you know what? I get it. I get why people would be worried about him. I don't want to see Chimaev lose this fight, but if he does, man, his stock is gonna go down low. Pretty gosh darn low. So I'm right now going back to seeing what Dana White exactly said about Nick Diaz. So here's what Dana White said. Listen, the Nick Diaz thing, White said. First of all, we would never have released that or done that. We'll see how this thing plays out. I don't have any expectations whatsoever. We'll see what happened. White was asked a follow-up question as to whether it was a wait-and-see scenario, to which the UFC president responded, yeah. As for recent talks, White confirmed the 2 parties have been in frequent communication, but indicated this isn't out of the ordinary, a claim White also made this past December. There's been talking for years. Interesting. So, let's bring up BJ Penn here. So, do I expect Nick Diaz to come back? I don't know. Until I see it, I don't believe it. That's all I gotta say. Until I see it, I just don't believe it. Meanwhile, we got people already throwing his names out there, like Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. So Wonderboy Stephen Thompson has recently been rumored as a possible opponent for Leon Edwards. Oh yeah, I forgot. So Leon Edwards, there's another evening that came out for Leon, and that he really is expecting to go full on back. So Wonderboy Stephen says, it's Submission Radio. Wonderboy said he wasn't particularly interested in that fight and would much prefer a bout with Nick Diaz if he's actually coming back, which is weird because I think there's a recent video that came out of Leon Edwards' Instagram where he took a super passionate promo about himself and his place in the UFC. So Wonderboy Stephen Thompson says not really. Thompson said about if he was interested in facing Edwards. If I were to be honest, if he ever comes back, Nick Diaz would be a really good fight. An interesting fight for sure. I said something on Twitter the other day about I would welcome him back to the division for sure. Wonderboy Stephen Thompson against Nick Diaz. I think that's way too much of a risky matchup for Nick. I don't think Nick would agree to a fight like that. I believe Wonderboy Stephen Thompson pretty much nullifies Nick Diaz. So, if I was Nick and his crew, I definitely wouldn't agree to that. Now, Stephen Thompson against Leon Edwards, that's a fight I'd be really excited about. But Stephen Thompson against Nick Diaz, if you want Nick Diaz to have a really good showcase, it's not against somebody as good as Wonderboy Stephen Thompson. I just don't believe it. And so coming back right after a short break here, I'll be coming back here with some more hot takes and going on with the rest of today's news brief. Once again, you're listening to the GSMC MMA podcast. Coming back right after the short break here. See you soon.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome back to the news brief. And so it is being reported in by MMAJunkie.usatoday.com. Sad news here as UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture girlfriend Minnie Robson injured in ATV accidents. UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture will undergo surgery Tuesday after he and his girlfriend Minnie Robson were injured in an ATV accident in Arizona on Monday. MMA Junkie confirmed the news with Couture's longtime manager Sam Spiro, who provided the following statements. Randy Couture and his girlfriend, Minnie Robinson, were involved in a quad ATV accident late last night on his ranch just outside of Flagstaff, Arizona. As a result of the accident, later today, Randy will be having some orthopedic surgery. He and Mindy are expected to make a full recovery. TMZ was the first to report on the news. Robinson, a conservative activist and political commentator, also confirmed TMZ reported in a tweet on Tuesday stating Couture suffered a broken shoulder and 4 ribs. Robinson added she fractured a transversal processor, assumed to be a transverse process, a small bone extending out to the vertebrae. This isn't the only health-related incident Couture has encountered in the past year. On October 23 of 2019, Couture suffered a heart attack following a workout in Los Angeles. The former UFC heavyweight champion and UFC heavyweight champion retired from the world of mixed martial arts in 2011. Couture has remained active on the MMA scene in other capacities, serving as a coach for Bellator's MMA Fight Master, and most recently a color commentator for Professional Fighting League. And so, my heart goes out to Randy Couture and his girlfriend. Hopefully things can go well for them. I really do hope so. So it is also coming in from MMAfighting.com that from UFC stardom to Bad Boys for Life, Rory Markham explains how he left fighting for good. As the production crew prepared a massive action scene in Bad Boys for Life, former UFC fighter Rory Markham got ready to shoot opposite Will Smith. So Bad Boys for Life, it's a movie coming up year of 2020. Markham was playing gun runner Booker Gracie, who was involved in an arms deal gone bad. Smith's character was determined to save him a miss in the shooting. It was hard for the 30-year-old fighter turned actor not to pinch himself. He was living above Pat Militich's gym in Bendorf, Iowa when he landed his first role thanks to a chance invitation from his former head coach. At the time, Markham was on the IFL roster, training alongside a room of legends like Matt Hughes and Robbie Lawler. But the acting bug already bit him years earlier when he took some class in Chicago. That brief experience led to an offer for Militich that gave Markham his start in front of the camera, or at least a role that didn't necessarily involve punching people in the face for a living. Pat runs upstairs and goes, "Rory, you used to go to acting school." Markham told MMA Fighting, he says, "Come on down. I've got to shoot these action scenes from this director down in Mexico." The movie was The Death and Life of Bobby Z, starring the late Paul Walker and Lawrence Fishburne. Markham, flanked by Militich and Lawler, flew to San Diego before driving south to the set. Lawler has also been offered an appearance. Little did Markham know at the time, but after arriving on set, he was informed his action scene could morph into a larger role with a speaking part. But first, he had to audition. His competition was his head coach and one of his most vicious knockout artists in the history of the sport. Thankfully, there were no punches thrown that day. Me and Robbie landed at the same time, and there was one part left to read for, Markham said. It was me, Robbie, and Pat. And the director, John Herschel, said, "You guys can read for it." Pat takes out his false teeth. I love you, Pat, so much. But this was terrible. It was so bad, he did his whole growl during the scene, and then Rob comes up, and Rob, he's heading south by southwest in a monotone voice, and not just there, he was there for a check and a little vacation. Then I came up, and I'm into this whole scenario. I grabbed some sand, clenching in my hand like I've been tracking somebody, and I said, "He's headed south by southwest, Mr. Johnson." Hurstfield is on a horse at this point when we're on set, and he goes, "Congratulations, kid. You just got your SAG, your Screen Actors Guild card." He hits a hard one. He hits a hard yeehaw and rides off to the sunset. This is very, very quirky. An introduction to film go, it was a pretty random bizarre, but it was something Markham never forgot. The movie led to a relationship with Mike Gunther, a famed stunt coordinator, producer, and director, who's worked on dozens of films and television projects, including The Avengers, A Quiet Place, and two Fast and Furious movies. Markham was still in the thick of his fighting career, so he wasn't necessarily focused on acting, with a successful run that eventually led to the UFC. He really didn't have the time to try another career, but he never lost that itch, especially as he stayed in touch with Gunther after he was released from the UFC following a particularly disastrous outing against Nick Diaz. He was ready for a challenge. That eventually arrived with the 2011 film Setup, where Markham starred alongside rapper Curtis 50 Cent Jackson and stars Bruce Willis and Ryan Philippe. Alright, do you really want to be in a film with 50 Cent back in 2011? Do you? Ryan Philippe is like, "Let's just improv. This director's cool. Let's just improve on this scene." And I'm like, oh my gosh, I had everything memorized from back to back, so I'm like, what am I going to say? Thankfully, the scene went off without a hitch, so I'm right now looking at Markham's Instagram here, which is, it's him dressed as like a military dude. To put his full focus on acting, Markham had to put fighting behind him, but as much as he loved being on set and filming with A-list celebrities, even 50 Cent? Bruce Willis in 2011? Whatever. It was still difficult for him to hang up the gloves and just walk away from MMA. That itch still gets at him from time to time because a passion for fighting doesn't just go away. The urge will always be there, Markham said. They say in the ring, the truth will find you, and you discover so much about yourself in fighting. You learn how far you can go. You know yourself as a human being. You do get his superhuman sense of empathy from fighting. You are out there humbling yourself. You're either going to win or you're going to lose in your underwear in front of millions of people sometimes. While he did eventually return for the fight game back in 2016, in large part because he didn't want his career to end on that loss to Diaz, Markham is comfortable now in his retirement from MMA. He admits fighting could easily draw him back into the cage or ring again if not for his new career in acting, which gave him a living he could rely on. I have a second thought that maybe I could fight again, Markham explained. Maybe I have something else to prove. I don't know if that feeling will ever go away, but it has helped to see there in my pension from acting. There is my retirement. If you stick with this and give it all your all, I will put my all into it, and I want to grow. I want to see this artistic side of this and use my mind instead of using my physical capabilities. Seeing those residual checks and that residual income is there, and now the next thing is always there that really subdues the urge to have a high of the fight and low after. This money quells that money by a long shot. It's something I trust, and I can't wait to experience hearing people say, I can't wait to see Rory play this guy. I believe in myself. I believe in my destiny. Fighting has been part of my destiny to get where I am today. Oh, man. So, you know what? Congratulations for him, man. I can't really... So he's out there. Oh, snap. So it's actually coming in from Roy Markham's Instagram. So, great pick of me and Will Smith, whose character is Hike, Bad Boys for Life action. Alright then, life movies. I remember myself and my brother, I lost going to see the first one together at the theater, and he was so convinced I could become what I always wanted to be, that he would matter or factly state it throughout the movie. He was a great friend and a better brother. This is for my angels in heaven. I promise to work to the bone and become a voracious student of the arts. Thank you, at Will Smith, for all the knowledge you taught simply by osmosis. You reminded me and others of what absolute pure professionalism while painting it at Remember At. In the other hand, making it look easy, but I know how hard you work, and it's absorbed by all those you touch. I guess I'll never find the words to describe this. By watching you and filming with you came a confidence and a sense of joy, hoping I once again use my talents to provide for those I love. Hashtag honored, hashtag humbled, hashtag focus, hashtag students. So yeah, someone is really happy for himself. Someone is. Oh, so I gotta mention this. So, it's appearing to the right side. We got... Alright. So we got Alves versus Lane for the BKFC Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships 11 coming up on 9/11/2020. BKFC as the main event. So, I'm going to transition here from, oh man, isn't that a good story that this like one guy is able to transition from being just an MMA fighter to an actor? But you know what? Good on him for doing that, man. According to him, he's really happy with the paycheck he's getting. He's really happy with himself. But now he's going towards, okay. This is such a weird thing I found. So, back in January 2020, news surfaced that Alves has signed a 3-fight contract with Bare Knuckle Fighting. He is expected to make his promotional debut against former contender from the Ultimate Fighter, Julian Lane, at BKFC 12. I gotta look at this card now. What is going on at BKFC 12 right now? What is the entire fight card here? So it is the main event. The main event is Julian Lane. Oh my goodness. Okay. This is the first time I am seeing this card right now. It's not, so, first off, BKFC, all I want to see is the actual card itself. I don't want to sign up. I just want to see what the card is. And according to the site, I can't look at the card unless I sign up. Oh man. Alright. Events Bare Knuckle Fighting Championships. Alright. So, BKFC, here are the 3. Okay, I'm so confused. So, here are the 2 fights people have to look out for. The fight card isn't even out yet. It says here, the fight card is coming soon. Which means that the actual card in itself isn't even really booked. There are currently only 2 fights that are being sold on this entire event. And those fights are, we have Thiago Alves versus Julian Lane. If you don't remember who Julian Lane is, he's the guy who says, wait, I just wanna, he says like a really lame line. He's like, I wanna rock, I wanna bounce, I wanna get down. Like, he says something like really awkward and cringy, Julian Lane did. And then he made a comeback and he was super cringy right there. But also, the co-main event, oh yeah, I wanna bang, yeah, so Thiago Alves, he's known for being jacked, fighting against Matt Hughes. And then Julian Lane, he's mostly known. Go type up Julian Lane on YouTube, and the first thing you see is this man being drunk, crying his tears out in the Ultimate Fighter, like in the house. And he's saying, I wanna bang, dude! I wanna bang! I just wanna bang, bro! I just wanna bang! And all the other guys are like, don't worry, man. You get to bang. You're gonna bang soon, dude. You're gonna bang. And Julian Lane's like, it's not fair. I just wanna bang. And it was like super cringy. It was super bad to watch. It was super awkward. And the co-main event is Hector Lombard versus Kendall Grove. Watch BKFC 12, everyone. 9/11/2020. We're gonna see Thiago Alves versus Julian Lane, jacked, roidy looking guy, several years ago, versus the dude who says, I wanna bang on television, versus Hector Lombard, this one dude who was a great prospect one time against Kendall Grove. Two fighters that exemplify a strange period in the UFC's history. Very strange. And I don't really know what to say. That was, I am puzzled. If you guys want to see Hector Lombard versus Kendall Grove and Julian Lane against Thiago Alves, you know where to find now. BKFC. Would have never thought that would be a thing, but it is. If they're making money, these fighters, they are making money, okay? In a sports where the organizations don't pay all that well, they're finding out ways to make money. And I can't be upset about them with that. It's just strange that I'm just constantly being pelted with advertisements about this fight. Strange. Just strange. And that right there is gonna bring us to a close for today's podcast. You have been a great audience. All I gotta say is thank you. Thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.